This week we're doodling 3 different foliage-packed fall wreaths in Procreate. In this week's tutorial, I'm bringing you 3 different wreaths that can be used for holiday stationery, social media posts, and seasonal crafts. Everything is drawn in a loose, freestyle fashion using basic shapes, so there's something anyone can draw. The color palette is free as always. Just tap on the link in the video description and you can download and install it. I'm going to start by creating a brand new canvas. I've listed my specs on screen, and let's begin. This week's tutorial is brought to you by Envato Elements, which is kind of like the Netflix of graphic design. They have tens of thousands of resources available to artists, including stock photos, presentation templates, audio tracks, logos, fonts, and my favorite, Procreate brushes. We're actually going to be using a set from their library for this week's tutorial, and they've generously offered every Tuesday subscribers with a 70% off coupon, which makes it less than $10 a month to try out. It's limited time though, so tap on the link in the video description to grab your coupon, and let's go download our brushes. Once you're signed into Envato Elements, this Procreate brush set that we're going to be using is called Marvelous Markers. So I'm just going to type in Marvelous Markers up at the top. And this is the one that we want. So I'm just going to tap on this and I can hit download and install it. Once it's installed in Procreate, you'll be able to find it at the very top of your brush categories in your brush library. Now that we have this brand new canvas, I'm going to set my background color, and I'm using the same background color for all 3 wreaths. So whether you want to make one or all of them, they'll all work on this color. So I'm going to tap on my layers, tap on background color, and select the very first color on the top row. Next, on the first layer, I like choosing a very contrasty color to give myself the outline for my wreath. So I'm just going to grab the darkest brown color here. The brush that I'm going to use to start out with is this Fixka pen tilt brush. It's got a really nice sketchy texture to it that I really love for this more doodly type of wreath. So what I like to do is I'm just going to give myself a circle, and I'm going to leave mine nice and loose. You can wait for it to snap and make it a perfect circle if you'd like, but since these are doodle wreaths, I want it to be just a little bit off, so I'm going to leave this as is. I'm going to reduce my opacity, and let's also make sure that this is centered on the canvas. So if you have uniform and snapping turned on down here, you'll get those crosshairs when it's centered. So I'm going to create a brand new layer, and now we can start layering everything in. The first element I'm going to put in here, I'm actually going to switch to this marker brush, which is 2 brushes above the Fixka pen tilt, and I'm going to switch to this lightest brown color. And this is going to be my largest element on my wreath because it's going to anchor everything and everything else is going to sit on top of it. It's just going to have large leaves on it. So this brush is nice because you can go light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure, and get some really pretty leaves with some soft edge textures to it. So I really like that about this brush. So I'm just going to give myself some really large leaves, and I'm going to make this asymmetrical over here. And I'm going to reduce the size of my leaves as I get closer to the bottom of my circle. And then I'm going to add something similar over here, but maybe not make it quite as large. Once you have your large leaf element, I'm going to create a brand new layer, and we're just going to start layering foliage after foliage on this wreath until it feels nice and full. So I'm going to switch back to this Fixka pen tilt brush and change my brush to the darkest brown color. My brush size is going to be about 5%. So I want 2 really dominant elements right here, and these ones are going to have these upside down teardrop leaves, and you can see I'm very sketchy in my style because I definitely want this to feel like a doodle wreath and not super precise everywhere. I want it to feel very hand-drawn and almost kind of crafty looking. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Next, we're going to add in some berries. So I'm going to switch to my first purple color right here. I'm going to increase my brush size to about 12% and paint in some little dots where I want my berries to go. So there's a big gap right here. And these are kind of my primary elements. So I'm bringing in color now to this wreath. So these ones I definitely want to appear really obvious to the viewer. They're not filler elements. Okay, I'm going to give my berries some highlights. So I'll create a brand new layer. I'm going to grab my lightest purple color and just put some dots where my light source is coming from. My light source is, I'm going to choose it coming from this direction over here. So that's where I'm going to put my dots. So we need to create a brand new layer underneath our berry layer. So I'm going to tap on my layer that's got my large anchoring foliage and create a brand new layer right above it. And let's grab our darkest purple color for this and reduce the size down to about 4%. I'm going to also add in some white eucalyptus just as another supporting foliage element. So I'm going to create a brand new layer behind everything I've done so far since they are supporting. So I'm going to tap on this anchoring leaf layer and then create a brand new layer right above it. Grab my white color and I'm going to stick with the same size brush here. I'm at 4%. So I'm going to draw a line down where I think it should go. And then I'll put an oval at the top and then do alternating ovals all the way down, and that will give the impression that it's eucalyptus. And I can make a small cluster if I want. Make sure they vary in height. That way they don't get too matchy-matchy as you go along. And you can see I still have quite a few empty areas, especially right here and right here. I'm going to fill those in with some foliage that come off of the berries. So I'm going to create a brand new layer and switch back to that dark purple color, but increase my brush size just a little bit. I'm coming up to 6%. Wherever I have these gaps, I'm just going to add in some really simple foliage. So these are going to be long upside down teardrops. And actually I want these behind the eucalyptus. I think it'll look a lot better. So I'm going to drag these underneath the eucalyptus layer. And I also am noticing that they're a little too similar in scale. So I'm going to add in some different scaled leaves here to make it a little denser and more variety. And if you see gaps in other areas, just extend these within it. Okay, now we can turn off our template layer. Let's add in our hand lettering. I like turning on my drawing guide that I've got a straight line, so go to Canvas, toggle on drawing guide, and I just use the default. And I'm going to keep this dark purple color selected and increase my brush size to 8% and write my message. There's our first doodle wreath complete. Let's group all of our layers together and label this one Wreath 1. And we can turn this off and begin wreath number 2. So create a brand new layer. Wreath number 2 is our simplest one and it's going to have an oval template. So I'm just going to freehand an oval here and center it on my canvas, reduce the opacity. And for this one, create a brand new layer. I'm going to start with some wheat-like elements. So I'm going to grab my darkest brown color. I'm going to reduce my brush size down to 5%. I'm going to draw a few elements coming from the side. This one's going to feel very asymmetrical. I'm going to have a little bunch of wheat right here. You can see that this is very rough and very sketchy, and that's totally fine. That's the style of this. So even if you think yours is looking too rough, just keep on going because it's all going to come together. For the wheat, just scribble on each side, and then you've got a wheat element. Come down, scribble on each side. Let's give ourselves a little bit of a ribbon. So I'm going to grab the orange color on a brand new layer, reduce the brush size just a little bit, and just draw a few lines right here, and then give yourself a little bow with the string. Now we're going to draw in our dandelion. I always called them dandelion puffballs, but they're actually called seed heads, which sounds way less fun, but that's what we're going to draw next. So I'm going to grab my white color, create a brand new layer. I've got 4%, and I'm just going to poke these in between a few of these. And we're just going to come around in a circle with lines and give the impression that it's got a little bit of volume here, like little starbursts. And now we need to have the little seeds that are coming off of the seed heads coming all the way around, and it's going to make up the rest of this oval shape. So I'm just going to put in some lines that are going every which way. It's almost like sprinkles. They're random, and sometimes you'll have them far apart, and then you'll have like a group of them too. So I'm going to put the little seed and then the little puffer part on the end that's carrying it in the wind. Let's see what that looks like without our template. So now I'm just going to add in my lettering, and then this one will be done. So create a brand new layer. We're going to grab the darkest brown color for this lettering, turn on my drawing guide again, and write out whatever you'd like. So that is wreath number 2. So let's group these together, label this one Wreath 2, and then turn it off, create a brand new layer. And then for our last wreath, this one's going to be the most complex out of the 3, but it's still made up of really simple elements. I'm going to make this one more of a vertical oval. So once again, I'm just going to freehand that vertical oval and then center it on my canvas, reduce the opacity, create a brand new layer, and we're ready to go. So for this one, I'm going to have a bunch of flowers on this side and flowers here. So similar to what we did with the other wreaths with having asymmetry with our foliage, we're going to use flowers now for that. So I'm going to grab my orange color, the third one on the top row, and I'm still using the same brush. This Fixca pen tilt, I'm going to use that for this entire piece. And I'm going to increase the size of this because we've got a lot of flowers to draw. I'm going to use about a 10% brush size, and I'm going to have some that have not bloomed yet. I'm going to have some that have bloomed and larger ones. So we're going to change up the scale, and you can just draw lines for these. I'm going to start closer to the bottom just to maintain that asymmetry. Once you have all of your flowers, now we're going to add in the stamens. So create a brand new layer, grab the darkest brown color, and in the centers of all of these, I'm just going to paint a circle. And then on all of the flower buds, I'm just going to give myself like a little triangle right here. Okay, we're going to add a little bit more detail to the flowers before moving on. So on your flowers layer, create a brand new layer right above it. Switch to the same color we're using as our background color. So it's the first one on the top row. Reduce your brush size down to like 3%. And I'm just going to put in a few lines all the way around on these. Now we're going to draw in the main stem of our flowers. So this stem needs to be behind everything we've drawn so far. So tap on our template layer, create a brand new layer right above it. We're going to grab that dark brown color, and I'm going to increase my brush size to about 5% and draw a stem down kind of right along this line. And I'm not going to go all the way to this one to connect it because that would look kind of weird. And we've got something else we can use for filler right there. So just end it like that. Once you have your stem in, now we can paint in some leaves. So these ones are going to be a little droopy and still scribbly. And they're, I guess I would say, on the larger side with the scale of them compared to the flowers. They're not going to be like super tiny. Now we're going to add in a little bit of white, either berries or cotton, just some extra supporting white foliage. So I'm going to grab my white color, create a brand new layer, and I'm going to do like a row. So I'm going to start with one dot and then put dots on either side all the way down. Same thing over here. This one will be a little bit smaller. And then wherever you've got gaps, just for a little extra punch of a different color. And then create a brand new layer right above that. And I'm going to switch to my light brown color right here and reduce my size down to about 3%. And I'm going to draw a line down and then put a little dot on top of each white dot. So we've got a nice transition from the dots to the stem. And then the last element that's going to tie everything together is going to be some line art foliage. So I'm going to create a brand new layer underneath everything that we've drawn so far. So I'm going to come down to my template layer, create a brand new layer. I'm going to grab this first purple color. I'm going to go to about 4% for this. And all I'm going to do is draw some really simple leaf outlines. It's very similar to the same leaves that we did with our yellow flowers, but these ones are going to be outlines. And then when I get to the top part, this part's going to come up pretty far and this one's going to stop short. So I'm going to leave a gap right here just to make it more dynamic. And anywhere where you see some gaps within your flowers, if there's any place where there's an opportunity, feel free to add in some extra outlines. Anywhere it feels like it could use something extra, that's fine too. Okay, let's turn off our oval and we can add in our lettering. So the lettering for this one, I'm going to use my bright orange color, increase my brush size, and turn on my drawing guide. Let's group all of our layers together, label this one Wreath 3, create a brand new layer up at the very top. Change your color to black. Come into your brush library to the sketching category and choose shading graphite and softly paint over your entire canvas so you get that nice texture on top of it. And then change the blend mode of this to soft light. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit the like button, subscribe, and I will see you next week.